Richard Jewell. Richard Jewell is about an American security guard who saved thousands of lives from an exploding bomb at the 1996 Olympics, but is vilified by journalists and the press, who falsely reported that he was a terrorist. The film is directed and produced by Clint Eastwood and is based on the American Nightmare, The Ballad of Richard Jewell, article by Marie Brenner, co-collaborating with the book. The Suspect is co-written by Kent Alexander and Kevin Sowlin and adapted to screenplay by Billy Ray. The film's leads are Paul Walter Hauser as Richard Jewell and Sam Rockwell as Watson Bryant. So guys, very interesting. We have a very interesting scenario with Richard Jewell. And I'll be the first person to put my hands up and give credit where it's due. Now, with Billy Ray as a writer, with his previous screenplays that happened with Gemini Man and The Terminator, they haven't really struck a chord with me. And in particular, especially with Gemini Man, I was very hard on him. And I have to say, Billy Ray, you have redeemed yourself. You've come back and you've really knocked it out the park. And I cannot appreciate you anymore for the hard work that you've put into Richard Jewell. So yeah, well done on that front. So the film's cinematography and its product design really did make me feel that I was back in 1996, which was great. And moving on to Clint Eastwood. Now, Clint Eastwood, for the first act of this film, made me feel like my intestines were going to come up and fall out my mouth, because that first act was so intense. The suspense was unreal. Absolute phenomenal directing from Clint Eastwood. And in particular, the camaraderie that happens in this film between Sam Rockwell and Paul Walter, I think it really did hold the screen together. And their camaraderie and the contrast between the characters and the conflict was all really well done. I think if there was any form of discrepancy with Richard Jewell, I think in terms of character development and the character's likability, it's always a fine line, because when you do a biopic, there isn't really a form of character development, because you're doing it in such a way that is so near and so real to the actual event itself. There's not really any leeway to create character development. I mean, there is character development in the film, but it comes within the third act. You know, it's not. You're not gonna get a pull and tug sensation of, you know, one moment, you know, you like him, one moment you dislike him. The pacing for that for Richard Jewell as a character is a bit off, but you know, and there's a couple of decisions as a viewer that I can only imagine people sitting there going, why is he acting that way? But because it's a biopic, he's just the way he is. There's nothing about it. This is him as a person, and you know, which means that so essentially the character arc and character development is going to be a lot different to what you're going to get in a normal film, basically. But I think that the way that it's written, I think the way it's directed really holds itself together, because I think the film does incite change, and I do think it incites the conflict and the contrast and the empathy within the film. Although there wasn't, again, not really something that I was really looking for. I mean, it is there. Actually, no. There's no point going there on that front. John Hamm is also in this film. He's really good. The the conflict between John Hamm on the FBI and Sam Rockwell as a lawyer defending Richard Jewell really made for some really sharp dialogue between those two characters, and you know, it kind of raises the tensions within the film. And you know, with Sam Rockwell, you know, this is a complete night and day performance to. It was only just recently I saw him in Jojo Rabbit, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and it just, every time he never fails to bring a great interpretation of his character, you know. And I really like it when I see actors giving it their all, and it just brings a smile to my face. And I have to say this as well. I can't help but think on these two particular things I'm about to talk about, that Clint Eastwood, he deserved to be nominated for Best Director. If it was anything that he was going to get nominated for, it should have been Best Director, you know. And Sam Rockwell, I believe, should have been nominated as well. I think he should have been in with a shout as well. Richard Jewell's mum, I believe, the actor that plays the mum to Richard Jewell, she's been nominated for an Oscar. But I don't know. I see it as a great performance, but it's a good performance, but it didn't really swipe me off my feet. I think there's maybe one moment of conflict between her and the son, and when she gives the monologue at the end of the film, that's when I felt really being gut wrenching. But again, there wasn't maybe enough scenes to make me inclined to think, oh, that's Oscar worthy, you know. But hey, look, it is what it is. Nothing we can do. We can't rewind. We can't go back in the past. And I think the film is interesting because it ultimately shows how the FBI tried to sweep this whole investigation under the rug, and that it just goes to show that, you know, I'm not saying the FBI are corrupt, but it just seems that the group of people that were within the FBI at the time back then, they knew that they had the power. They knew that, you know, if they could grease a few palms and swindle a few things their way, then nobody would notice. And that in itself was interesting to see how they can manipulate the public, manipulate the journalists to think a certain way and build a certain narrative within people's heads that obviously that Richard Jewell could be the perpetrator. And it's almost like this inner war within Richard Jewell that he has to come within, you know, the inner understanding that what he's been aspiring to his whole life just isn't what it is. And I think that message in itself is quite apparent, because we can all look at something from the outside and we want to be there, but when we're actually in it, it's totally different from being on the outside looking in. They're both different phenomenons, and the film does a really good job in showing that. Olivia Wilde's in this film. It's good to see her acting. Obviously we know that she done Booksmart. Her role as a kind of rogue, galvanized, she likes to grease the palms as well, and she done a good job with her interpretation of her acting as well. But ultimately, the pacing of this film is really good, and I got to be honest with you, I had a better time with Richard Jewell than watching Parasite or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Look, you guys can disagree to agree. I think this is a film that's kind of been lost in translation, whether it was the marking or whatever the case might be. I really do think that this is a really, really good film, and it's worth your time. So that will now lead me now to say this. I will be giving Richard Jewell a 9 out of 10. Go and see it. And part of the reason why I was holding my head in the thumbnail is because I cannot believe that Clint Eastwood wasn't nominated for best director, and there wasn't really any appreciation for Sam Rockwell. But hey, look, we talk the real shit on this channel and we say it how it is. So guys, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.